Every single day, you are choosing something even when you don't realize it. You choose what deserves your time. You choose what occupies your thoughts. You choose what deserves your time. You choose what defines your worth. And slowly, quietly, those choices begin to shape the direction of your life. But here's a question that changes everything. What sits first in your heart? What sits first in your heart? Because whatever you place above all else will eventually control your peace, your priorities, and your purpose. It may be success. It may be relationships. It may be money, approval, or comfort. None of those things are wrong on their own. But when they take God's place, they begin to demand what only He can sustain. There is a quiet emptiness that follows when we chase everything but Him. There is a quiet emptiness that follows when we chase everything but Him. You can achieve goals, gain recognition, and still feel unsettled inside. Why? Because your soul was never designed to be led by temporary things. What if the breakthrough you're searching for begins with one decision, choosing God above everything else? Take a moment and reflect. What has been competing for first place in your life lately? What has been competing for first place in your life lately? Share your honest answer in the comments. Your transparency might encourage someone else to realign their priorities too. Every day of your life is shaped by one simple but powerful reality. You become what you choose. Your direction is determined by your decisions. Your character is formed by your commitments. And your destiny quietly follows whatever sits at the center of your heart. Whether you realize it or not, something always holds first place in your life. It may be ambition. It may be relationships. It may be security, success, approval, or comfort. But whatever you place above everything else will ultimately shape who you become. And this is why the call to choose God above all else is not merely a religious statement. It is a life-defining decision. It is a life-defining decision. In Deuteronomy 3:19, God speaks with clarity. I have set before you life and death, blessings and curses. Now choose life. Notice that He presents a choice. He does not force obedience. He does not manipulate devotion. He invites decision because love that is not chosen is not love at all. When you choose God above all else, you are not simply adding Him to your schedule. You are establishing Him as the foundation of your identity. You are declaring that His will outweighs your preference, that His truth outweighs public opinion, that His presence outweighs public opinion, that His presence outweighs temporary pleasure. Jesus said in Matthew 6:33, seek first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. The order matters. Seek first, not second. Not when it's convenient, not after you have pursued everything else. First, the problem in many lives is not that God is absent. It is that He is secondary. We want His blessings but resist His authority. We want His protection but resist His authority. We want His protection but hesitate to surrender control. We want His promises but delay obedience. But you cannot place God second and expect first-class results in your life. Choosing God above all else requires clarity about what truly matters. It demands that you examine your priorities with honesty. It demands that you examine your priorities with honesty. What consumes your thoughts? What drives your decisions? What influences your emotions the most? Because whatever dominates your heart directs your life. Directs your life. In Exodus 23, God commands, you shall have no other gods before me. This was not merely about carved idols of stone and wood. It was about anything that competes for ultimate loyalty. An idol is not always a statue. Sometimes it is a career. Sometimes it is money. Sometimes it is reputation. Sometimes it is even relationships. Anything you depend on more than God becomes your functional God. Anything you depend on more than God becomes your functional God. And here's the danger. Whatever you elevate above God cannot sustain you. Money can fluctuate. Status can disappear. Relationships can change. Health can decline. Opportunities can fade. Health can decline. Opportunities can fade. but God remains constant. Hebrews 13:8 reminds us that Jesus Christ is the same yesterday and today and forever. When you choose God, you anchor your life to something unchanging in a world that constantly shifts. Choosing God above all else is also about trust. It is easy to declare faith when circumstances are favorable. It is easy to declare faith when circumstances are favorable. But true choice is revealed when obedience costs you something Abraham chose God when he left everything familiar to follow a promise he could not yet see. Genesis 12. He chose God again when he was willing to place Isaac, the very promise he waited for, on the altar. Genesis 22. That was not blind faith. That was surrendered trust. He understood that the giver was greater than the gift. And that is a revelation many struggle to embrace. We often cling tightly to what God gives us, forgetting that the source is more important than the resource. Forgetting that the source is more important than the resource. When you choose God above all else, you declare that nothing He gives you will ever become more important than Him. It means obedience when it is uncomfortable. It means integrity when compromise seems easier. It means humility when pride demands recognition. It means forgiveness when resentment feels justified. It means faithfulness when culture promotes convenience. It means faithfulness when culture promotes convenience. Joshua stood before the people and declared in Joshua 24:15, "Choose for yourselves this day whom you will serve, but as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord." That was leadership rooted in conviction. He understood that neutrality is not an option. You are either choosing God or drifting towards something else. And drifting requires no effort. Devotion does. Choosing God above all else also reshapes your desires. Psalm 37:4 says, "Delight yourself in the Lord, and He will give you the desires of your heart." This does not mean God grants every fleeting wish. It means that when you delight in Him, your desires begin to align with His. Begin to align with His. Your heart changes. Your ambitions mature. Your goals become infused with purpose rather than ego. You begin to want what He wants. And in that alignment, fulfillment grows. Because purpose is discovered not in self-exaltation, but in surrender. Choosing God also affects your identity. When Peter declared Jesus as the Messiah in Matthew 16:60, it was more than recognition. It was alignment. From that moment forward, his life was no longer centered on fishing nets and personal ambition, but on kingdom purpose. Your identity is shaped by what you choose to follow. If you choose popularity, you will constantly chase approval. If you choose wealth, you will measure yourself by accumulation. If you choose success, you may never feel satisfied. But if you choose God, you measure yourself by obedience. And obedience produces peace. There is a quiet strength that comes from knowing you are aligned with God's will. It does not mean life becomes easy. It means life becomes anchored. Daniel chose God above position when he refused to compromise his convictions. Daniel 6, the lion's den was not the consequence of failure. It was the evidence of faithfulness. It was the evidence of faithfulness. And God honored that choice. Choosing God may not always protect you from trials, but it will sustain you through them. Because when you stand with Him, you never stand alone. Romans 8:31 asks, if God is for us, who can be against us? That confidence changes how you walk into rooms. It changes how you face opposition. It changes how you face opposition. It changes how you respond to fear. When God is first, fear loses authority. When God is first, comparison loses influence. When God is first, insecurity loses control. Because your validation no longer comes from applause, but from alignment. Choosing God above all else also demands sacrifice. Jesus said in Luke 9:23, whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross daily and follow me. Daily. Not once, not occasionally. Daily. Daily. not once, not occasionally, because every day presents new opportunities to prioritize something else above Him. The cross represents surrender of self-centered ambition. It represents the death of pride. It represents the willingness to trust God's way over your own. And though sacrifice may seem costly, it is never wasted. Because whatever you surrender to God is transformed under His authority. When you choose Him, you gain perspective. You begin to see temporary pleasures for what they are, fleeting. You begin to see eternal investments for what they are, lasting power. Colossians 3:2 urges, set your minds on things above, not on earthly things. This is not an escape from responsibility. It is a recalibration of focus. When your mind is set on eternal truth, temporary distractions lose their grip. Choosing God above all else is not about perfection. It is about direction. It is about waking up each day and intentionally placing Him at the center. It is about choosing prayer over panic, truth over trend, faith over fear, service over self, and love over pride. Service over self and love over pride. 5, because ultimately what you choose today determines who you become tomorrow. And when God sits at the center of your choices, your life begins to reflect His character, His wisdom, and His purpose in ways that ripple far beyond what you can see. Beck, always when God becomes your center, your life stops revolving around temporary applause and starts reflecting eternal purpose. And purpose changes how you endure hardship. How you endure hardship. When you choose God above all else, you begin to understand that your life is not random. Your struggles are not meaningless interruptions. Your victories are not accidents. There is intentionality woven into your journey. Romans 12:1 urges us to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. Notice that worship is not confined to songs or Sundays. It is a lifestyle. It is a daily offering. It is choosing God in conversations, in decisions, in private thoughts, in public actions. Choosing God above all else means your worship continues when no one is watching. It means integrity in silence. It means faithfulness in obscurity. It means consistency when recognition is absent. Because when God is your priority, you no longer perform for people. You live before Him. And there is something deeply freeing about that. When your value comes from God, criticism does not destroy you, and praise does not control you. You are steady because your foundation is secure. Psalm 16:8 says, I keep my eyes always on the Lord. With Him at my right hand, I will not be shaken. Not shaken, you. Not shaken. Not shaken side by. Opinions may shift, circumstances may change, but your core remains unmoved. This kind of stability is rare in a world driven by trends and instant gratification. Choosing God above all else also shapes your relationships. When He is first, love becomes healthier. You no longer expect another human being to fill the space only God can occupy. You stop placing divine expectations on imperfect people. You love from wholeness, not from desperation. You serve from overflow, not from emptiness. And that changes everything. Because when God is first, your relationships are no longer about control or dependency. They are about grace and partnership. 1 John 4:19 reminds us, we love because He first loved us. When His love anchors you, you are not constantly seeking validation. You are secure enough to give without fear of loss. Choosing God above all else also redefines success. The world defines success by accumulation, visibility, and influence. But God measures success by obedience, by faithfulness, by alignment. In Matthew 25, when the servants were evaluated, the reward was not well done, famous servant. It was well done, good and faithful servant. It was well done, good and faithful servant. Faithfulness over fame. Obedience over outcome. When you choose God, your goals may still be ambitious, but they are surrendered. You work diligently, but your identity is not tied to achievement. You pursue excellence, but you measure yourself by obedience, not applause. And that produces peace. Because success in God's kingdom is not about comparison, it is about calling. Choosing God above all else also demands courage. It takes courage to stand for truth when compromise is popular. It takes courage to stand for truth when compromise is popular. It takes courage to live differently when culture presses conformative. It takes courage to forgive when bitterness feels justified. It takes courage to trust when doubt whispers loudly, but courage grows when conviction is clear. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego chose God above safety in Daniel 3. They stood before a fiery furnace and declared that even if God did not rescue them, they would not bow. That is devotion. That is unwavering choice. And though they were thrown into the fire, they were not consumed. Because when you choose God, even the flames become testimonies. Sometimes choosing Him will place you in uncomfortable spaces. It may cost you opportunities. It may cost you approval. It may cost you temporary comfort. But it will never, cost you eternal reward. Mark 8:36 asks, what good is it for someone to gain the whole world, yet forfeit their soul? This question demands reflection. What are you chasing? What are you prioritizing? What sits on the throne of your heart? Because something always does. Choosing God above all else is not about rejecting ambition. It is about sanctifying it. It is not about abandoning dreams. It is about aligning them. It is not about withdrawing from the world. It is about influencing it from a place of surrender. When God is first, your work becomes worship. Your leadership becomes service. Your leadership becomes service. Your success becomes stewardship. And your life becomes a reflection of His character. Choosing God also transforms how you face uncertainty. When you do not know the outcome, you rest in His sovereignty. When doors close, you trust His redirection. When prayers seem delayed, you believe His timing is precise. Psalm 31:15 declares, my times are in your hands. That is surrender. That is peace in uncertainty. When your times are in His hands, you stop racing against the clock. When your times are in His hands, you stop racing. When your times are in His hands, you stop racing against the clock in professed. You stop comparing timelines. You stop forcing doors that God has not opened. You begin to wait with confidence rather than anxiety. Because you understand that God is never late. Choosing Him above all else also deepens intimacy. God does not force closeness. He invites it. James 4:8 says, draw near to God and He will draw near to you. Notice the partnership. You move. He responds. You seek. He reveals. You prioritize. He fills an intimacy with God. It grows in quiet moments. It deepens in prayer. It strengthens in surrender. It matures in obedience. The more you choose Him, the more clearly you hear His voice. The more you align with His word, the more confidently you walk in His will. And over time, choosing God He's shaping you. He's feeling like sacrifice and starts feeling like privilege. Because you realize that placing Him first does not diminish your life. It enhances it. It brings clarity where there was confusion. It brings direction where there was wandering. It brings stability where there was chaos. It brings purpose where there was emptiness. And slowly, intentionally, your life becomes a testimony, not of perfection, but of priority. Not of priority, not of flawlessness, but of faithfulness. People may not always understand your choices. They may question your restraint. They may challenge your convictions. But when your heart is anchored in God, you do not need universal approval. You need alignment, and alignment brings confidence. He's shaping you, and alignment brings confidence. Because at the end of the day, every person must answer one defining question: who sits first in my life? Not just in words, but in action. Not just in public. And when the answer is God, not casually, not occasionally, but consistently, your life begins to carry a different weight. a different clarity, a different clarity, a different strength. Because choosing God above all else is not simply about eternity. It is about transformation here and now. It is about living with intention. It is about walking with conviction. It is about loving with purpose. It is about standing with courage. It is about surrendering with trust. It is about surrendering with trust. And every single day presents another opportunity to make that choice again, because choosing God is not a one-time declaration. It is a daily devotion. Every morning you wake up, something will compete for your attention. Notifications, responsibilities, expectations, ambitions, fears, they all clamor for first place. And in those quiet early moments before the noise fully rises, there is a sacred opportunity to decide again who will lead your day. Will it be pressure? Will it be performance? Will it be people's opinions, hiring? Or will it be God? When you intentionally choose Him first, something shifts in the atmosphere of your life. You are no longer reacting to the day. You are rooted before it begins. Psalm 5:3 says, "In the morning, Lord, you hear my voice. In the morning I lay my voice. In the morning I lay my requests before you and wait expectantly." That expectancy is powerful. It reflects a heart that believes God is involved, attentive and active. Choosing God above all else means giving Him not just your emergencies, but your ordinary moments. It means inviting Him into your decisions, your conversations, your frustrations, and your frustrations and your celebrations. It means acknowledging that He is not a distant observer, but an ever-present guide. And when you begin to live this way, you notice that your inner world changes. Your thoughts become more disciplined. Your reactions become more measured. Your words become more intentional. Because when God is first, His word begins to shape your perspective. Psalm 105 says, "Your word is a lamp to my feet and a light to my path." A lamp does not reveal the entire road at once. It illuminates the next step. Choosing God means trusting Him step by step, even when the full picture is unclear. And that requires humility. It requires admitting that you do not need to see the entire staircase, just the next faithful step. Pride demands full clarity before obedience. Faith moves with partial understanding, but full trust. Choosing God above all else also strengthens your resilience in temptation. Temptation often presents itself as immediate satisfaction. It whispers that compromise is harmless, that shortcuts are easier, that no one will notice. But when God is your priority, you measure choices differently. You ask, does this honor Him? You ask, does this align with who He is shaping me to be? Joseph faced temptation in Genesis 39 when no one else was watching. He could have justified it. He could have hidden it. But his response was rooted in priority. How then could I do such a wicked thing and sin against God? His awareness of God's presence guided his integrity. His awareness of God's presence guided his integrity. Choosing God does not remove temptation. It strengthens your resistance. And every act of obedience builds spiritual confidence. And every act of obedience builds spiritual confidence. Every moment you choose Him over compromise reinforces your identity as someone anchored in truth. And that identity becomes your strength in future battles. Choosing God above all else also refines your speech. When He is first, your words carry grace rather than bitterness. They carry encouragement rather than criticism. They carry encouragement rather than compulsiveness. They carry wisdom rather than impulsiveness. Because Jesus said in Luke 6:45, out of the abundance of the heart the mouth speaks. If God fills your heart, your words will reflect Him, and words matter. They build or break. They heal or harm. They reveal what reigns within. When you choose God, you begin to pause before speaking. You consider not only what is true, but what is loving. You speak with purpose rather than reaction. Choosing God also transforms how you handle success. Success can subtly shift your focus from dependence to self-sufficiency. it can tempt you to believe you're the source of your achievements. But when God is first, gratitude replaces pride. Deuteronomy 8:18 reminds us, remember the Lord your God, for it is He who gives you the ability to produce wealth. Your talents are gifts. Your opportunities are grace. Your achievements are not solely your own doing. The remembering this keeps your heart humble. Humility sustains success far longer than ego ever could. Choosing God above all else also impacts how you endure suffering. Pain has a way of testing priorities. In hardship, what you truly trust becomes evident. If your security is rooted in comfort, suffering will shake you. If it is rooted in God, suffering may stretch you, but it will not destroy you. Job, in the midst of profound loss, declared in Job 121, the Lord gave and the Lord has taken away. May the name of the Lord be praised. That kind of faith does not arise overnight. It grows from a life where God has consistently been first. Choosing Him in seasons of abundance prepares you to trust Him in seasons of lack, and trust in suffering deepens intimacy. It reveals that God is not only the giver of blessings, but the sustainer of souls. When He is first, your joy is not fragile. It is rooted. Your hope is not circumstantial. It is anchored. Choosing God above all else also influences how you invest your time. Time is one of the clearest indicators of priority. What you make space for reveals what you value. When God is first, you carve out moments to seek Him, not out of obligation, but desire. You read His Word not as a checklist, but as nourishment. You read His Word not as a checklist, but as nourishment. You pray not as ritual, but as relationship. And as that relationship grows, you begin to recognize His voice more clearly. You sense His guidance in decisions. You feel conviction when drifting. You experience peace when aligned, and that awareness becomes your compass. The world may shift. Opinions may change. But when God is first, your direction remains steady. Choosing Him above all else also means trusting Him with your future. So many anxieties stem from uncertainty about what field is ahead. Career paths, relationships, health, family. The unknown can feel overwhelming, but Proverbs 16:9 reminds us, in their hearts humans plan their course, but the Lord establishes their steps. Planning is wise, but trusting is essential. You make your plans with diligence, but you release the outcome with faith. You work faithfully, but you rest in sovereignty. But you reach the outcome with faith. You work faithfully, but you rest in sovereignty. Because when God is first, your future is not a gamble. It is guided. And even when doors close, you trust that redirection is not rejection, is not rejection, is not rejection. Even when answers delay, you believe that preparation is taking place. Even when clarity is absent, you hold on to His character, because His character has proven trustworthy. Again and again, and as you continue choosing Him, not perfectly but persistently, your life begins to reflect a quiet strength, a steadiness that others notice, a peace that seems unshaken, a joy that does not depend on applause. Because when God is above all else, nothing else sits high enough to control you. And that freedom, that sacred, steady freedom, becomes the evidence that your choice was not only wise, but life-changing you, but life-changing. And when all is said and done, the greatest decision you will ever make is not about career, wealth, relationships, or status. It is about who holds first place in your heart. Because whatever sits at the center of your life will shape your thoughts, guide your steps, influence your character, and ultimately determine your legacy. To choose God above all else is to choose stability in a shifting world. It is to choose truth in a culture of confusion. It is to choose eternal purpose over temporary applause. It is to anchor your life in something that cannot be shaken, stolen, or taken away. This choice will not always be easy. It may require sacrifice. It may require courage. It may require courage. It may require standing alone at times. But every act of obedience, every moment of surrender, every decision to honor Him above convenience strengthens your spirit and clarifies your direction. When God is first, everything else finds its rightful place. Its rightful place. Your work becomes worship. Your relationships become healthier. Your success becomes stewardship. Your trials become testimony. Your trials become testimony. Your life becomes a reflection of His presence. And one day when you look back over the path you have walked, you will realize that placing Him above all else was not a restriction. It was the greatest freedom you could ever experience. Because in choosing Him, you did not lose your life, you found it.